True Gay Crime contains coarse language, adult themes, and content that is violent and disturbing. If at any time you feel you need help, please refer to the toll-free crisis lines in the show notes. Welcome to True Gay Crime. I'm your host, Patrick Marano, and on today's episode, this week we're doing it a little bit different. This is a one-of-a-kind here for True Gay Crime. It's a story within what? There's many different crimes here, and they span almost a century. All of them are linked, and all of them end badly. From Nazi Germany to the Admiral Duncan pub in Soho in central London, where in 1999, a nail bomb attack is carried out by David Copeland, a.k.a. the London Nail Bomber. Okay, so some of the sources that I used for this story are a lot of Wikipedia. So I use Wikipedia page, Wikipedia for neo-Nazis, the Admiral pub, David Copeland, and London nail bombing. I also got information from the irishtimes.com and theguardian.com. Okay, so let's jump right in. Without further ado, let's examine how neo-Nazism transformed a mentally ill man into someone who planted 3 nail bombs throughout London to stoke fear and harm minority groups, including the LGBTQ2+ community. Okay, this is a story, obviously, of how a hate-filled movement influenced an individual to commit a hate crime, resulting in death and destruction. So it's important to begin by defining what that hate-filled movement is. What is neo-Nazism? Where does it come from? What does it stand for? And how is this poison affecting populations today? Because to be honest, all I really knew about neo-Nazis before doing this research was something about white supremacy. I knew I wasn't into it. I know it's bad. White supremacists. So let's get into it. Let's unpack neo-Nazism. It specifically refers to post-World War II movements, either social, political, and military, looking to revive the ideas put forth by the Nazi ideology. Ideology. Tomato. So they don't even try to sugarcoat it. They flat out promote hate. Like, that's part of the movement, to spread hate and fear. Imagine what kind of person you have to be to sign up for something like that. Like, how afraid and angry of a person do you have to be to subscribe to something like that? I actually, if it wasn't so evil, I would feel bad for you. I mean, I feel bad that you're evil, if that makes sense. They obviously believe in white supremacy. They encourage attacks on racial and ethnic minorities with the goal, in some cases, to create a fascist state. Neo-Nazism is considered a particular form of far-right politics and right-wing extremism. Unfortunately, this bullshit is global, and we've seen it most recently, obviously, with the resurgence in the United States through the encouragement of assholes like Donald fucking Trump, fanning the flames of hate. Listen to this list of defining features of the neo-Nazis and try to separate it from Trump. I dare you. Try. Go ahead. Okay, let's start here. Ultra-nationalism. So this is all the things that they stand for. Ultra-nationalism is extreme nationalism that promotes the interest of one state or people above all others. Or simply put, extreme devotion to one's own nation. And then I put in brackets, at the expense of others, which is basically what it is. So also racism, obviously, is the belief that groups of humans can be divided on the superiority of one race over another based on physical appearance, which is bullshit. Xenophobia is the fear or hatred of that which is perceived to be foreign or strange. Okay, check. Ableism is discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities and or people, or I guess maybe we would say differently abled, and or people who are perceived to be disabled. You know, this reminds me, all of these things are reminding me of John Bunting. Do you remember the Bodies and Barrels murders? He was against differently abled people, homosexuals, and maybe he was a Nazi. Maybe he didn't know he was a Nazi, but really he was. Of course, homophobia, which and discrimination of the LGBTQ2+ community. There's also a thing called anti-ziganism. What? I know, let me explain. Or they also call it Romanism, which is hostility, prejudice, or discrimination or racism, which is specifically directed at Romani people. So I had to Google that. The Romani are also known as the Roma, are an Indo-Aryan people, traditionally nomadic itinerants living mostly in Europe. So basically gypsies. You know, people call them gypsies, which is kind of a derogatory term, but that's who it is. Okay. Anti-Semitism, discrimination of Jews, we know. Anti-communism, okay, speaks for itself. And this is what they stand for, the Fourth Reich. So Hitler, you may know or recall, was part of the Third Reich. So neo-Nazis are interested in the hypothetical future of a Fourth Reich, which is a successor to Adolf Hitler's. The term has also been used to refer to possible Nazi resurgence in Germany, to describe presumed German influence in the EU, or to describe the Nixon administration and the Trump administration in the US. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so as if that shit is not bad enough, a common trait of neo-Nazism is the denial of the Holocaust, which I don't understand, because I feel like if you're so hateful and angry and your whole mission is to promote hate and fear and violence, to your cause, wasn't the Holocaust a win in some regards for you? So why, as a neo-Nazi, would you be denying the Holocaust existed? It seems counterproductive to the mantra or to the mission statement of your movement. No? I don't. But interesting tidbit, though. Holocaust denial is actually a crime according to the German criminal code. So there's that. So Nazis proudly show off their Nazi symbols like the swastika, which is formally adopted in 1920. The black swastika is rotated 45 degrees on a white circle on a red background. We've all seen it. It's used on flags, armbands, badges. So the colors on the flag are the colors of the German Empire. Hitler described the color meanings like this. The red is social thought, underlaying the movement. The white is national thought, and the swastika itself was the mission given to the party, namely the struggle for the victory of Aryan mankind. Today, there are certain countries such as Germany, Austria, France, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Ukraine, Brazil, Israel. They have banned Nazi symbols, and it's considered a criminal offense if they're displayed publicly for non-educational purposes. Okay, so basically the Nazis want Aryan supremacy. But what the fuck is an Aryan? You think you know, but you don't. Well, you might. But I'm assuming most of you don't know. You probably just think, oh, it's white people. No, it's more than that. Are you ready for this? What makes Aryans so fucking great in the eyes of the Nazis? So the Nazis believe, God, I can't believe I'm going to read this, that Aryans are the descendants of people who come from a mythical land of the north. I'm not making this up. This is based on Greek mythology, you guys. Stories ancient humans made up to explain shit they didn't understand. So the Aryans are supposed to be descendants of the Hyperboreans, who were a mythical people who lived in the far northern part of the known world. Even though they lived in the Arctic, the Hyperboreans were believed to inhabit a sunny, temperate, divinely blessed land. The oldest myths portray them as the favorites of Apollo. I said Apollo, yeah. Like, you know, Zeus, Medusa, Hercules. We're talking about Greek mythology. Guys, what the fuck is going on? Okay, so the Hyperboreans were supposed to be far higher beings than the Aryans of today because of the mixing of cultures. So basically they think mixing, interracial dating, mixing is bringing the entire race down. So because Aryans have mixed, they're weaker. So the Aryans want to return to the golden age of the past. And to do that, they need to awaken the memory of the blood. So they're like vampires now. It gets worse. Often an extraterrestrial origin of the Hyperboreans is believed. Extraterrestrials. So they're aliens. Neo-Nazis think they're superior because they're descended from aliens, basically. Obviously, we can't talk about Nazis without talking about Germany. So in February 1933, Ernst Röhm, a prominent gay Nazi official who obviously hated himself, launches a purge of homophiles, which is what they called anyone in the community. Clubs in Berlin close, sex publications are banned, so are any gay organized groups. People start fleeing Germany, with gay men marrying lesbians to cover up who they really are. One gay man is quoted as saying, quote, "We lived like animals in a wild game park, always sensing the hunters." They were arresting homosexuals to generate lists of other members in the gay community, resulting in a societal purge of the community. So after coming to power, Hitler would include gay men among those sent to concentration camps during the Holocaust. He said, quote, "We must exterminate these people root and branch. The homosexual must be eliminated." Like, what are you scared of, Hitler? Trust me, you're not that cute. In Nazi Germany, gay men were deemed against the plan, quote unquote, of creating a master race, and the SS forced them to conform, or they would be sent to concentration camps under the extermination through work campaign. So they round up more than 1 million gay Germans, and hundreds of gay Europeans are castrated, like they cut off their balls. The SS and its leader, Heinrich Himmler, who you've probably heard that name before because he's notorious, he'd be more lenient on gays who had more, quote, Aryanness or, quote, manliness. So he was into mask for mask, basically. His big problem was also that so many Germans died in World War I and that the German people needed to repopulate. And he theorized that if there are so many gay men around, who's going to father new babies? So the German race would obviously go extinct, which, if you're really concerned about repopulating, why are you killing off men, you idiots? You need their jizz. So just have them jizz in cups and use that to repopulate. Like, what? You're killing off perfectly good sperm, assholes. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Okay, when it comes to concentration camps, gay men in concentration camps receive brutal treatment. They're considered the lowest of the low, and they're used for target practice. Being raped, so you're raping a gay man, you're sticking your dick into a man's butt, and you're persecuting them for doing the same thing. They would cut off their testicles. They would boil them in water. One survivor said, quote, "The Nazis stuck 25 centimeters of wood up my ass." Many are beaten to death, and it's been noted that homosexuals in the Nazi regime were targeted, quote, "in a manner without parallel in any civilized state in the world." A study found that 60% of gay men in concentration camps died, as compared to 41% for political prisoners and 35% for Jehovah's Witnesses. So they really hated the gays. The leader of the SS is basically a homophobic, misogynistic asshole. He hated anything unmasculine, so he greenlit experiments to be done on homosexuals for the benefit of the state. Nazi doctors were charged with the task of finding a cure for homosexuality and were given gay men to experiment on. They did horrible shit, funded all by the SS and Himmler, which involved things like making cuts in the groin area of the subject and inserting an artificial male sexual gland, which basically comprised of a metal tube that would release testosterone over time because they thought gay men lacked the hormone. Which, can I say something on a personal note? My doctor looked at me once and was like, "You have so much testosterone." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" And he's like, "No, you have tons and tons." And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And I'm super gay. I'm not feminine, but I'm gay. Like, I'm gay. I'm gay. Like, I'm gay. Did I mention I'm gay? Hi, my name is Patrick. I'm gay. Like, I'm gay. And I have tons of testosterone. Actually, if you need some, you can come to me. I should start bottling it and selling it. I wonder if I can do that. Make some money on the side. Anyway, the point is, testosterone doesn't make you not gay. Some desperate subjects claimed through the experiments that they became heterosexual after the procedure in an attempt to escape the camps, obviously. But actually, it would have made them just more horny. The others that didn't show improvement were deemed chronic or incurable, with many men dying due to infections. Also, the Third Reich forced lesbian women to have sex with men in German camp brothels, and gay men were forced to perform sex acts on female sex slaves as part of conversion therapy. Okay. Gays were segregated from the rest of the camp population because they thought at the time that you can catch it, that you can catch gay. Like, if you're in proximity to gay, you'll become gay. Which sounds really stupid, I know, but there are still people who think that way today. And much closer to home. Part of the conversion therapy included beating and humiliation and putting men under heat lamps so hot that it burned the skin. Not surprisingly, there are absolutely no useful statistics that come out of these, quote, experiments, and no scientific knowledge is gained by any of it. So it was all just torture. Okay, so that was Nazi Germany during the time of Hitler. We're going to fast forward now. We're still in Germany, but it's 1969, and the failure of the National Democratic Party of Germany at the polls creates small splinter groups which are committed to the revival of the Nazi ideology. And neo-Nazis appear in East Germany as a rebellion against the communist regime. Still in Germany, but years later, in 2012, according to an annual report of Germany's Interior Intelligence Services, there were 26,000 right-wing extremists living in Germany with 6,000 neo-Nazis. And in March 2020, the United German People and Tribes, a neo-Nazi movement that rejects the German state as a legal entity, is raided by German police. So, as I mentioned, the neo-Nazi movement isn't unique to Germany. It spread like COVID-19 around the planet. In the United States, there are several neo-Nazi groups. The National Socialist Movement has over 400 members in 32 states, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you had 400 neo-Nazis coming at you, that's fucking scary. Most groups were formed after World War II with varying degrees of support. For example, the National States Rights Party, which is the stupidest name to say, National States Rights Party, I mean, at least think of a cute name. Founded in 1958, countered racial integration in the South, obviously, with Nazi-inspired publications and iconography. There's also the American Nazi Party, which is more to the point. I think if you're going to name your party, I mean, say what it is. That party is founded in 1959. Okay, so get this one. This crazy bitch named Helena Blavatsky develops a crazy theory of evolution, basically saying that the Aryan race, which is obviously the superior race for her, is descended from Atlanteans. Atlanteans, I know, from Atlantis. Yeah, the fairy tale land, remember it was flooded and then it went under the ocean, lost forever. She thinks Aryans are descended from Atlanteans. That's a little side note for you to chuckle over. Or roll your eyes, or get angry, I don't know, or feel all those feelings. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, which allows political organizations great latitude in expressing Nazi, racist, and anti-Semitic views. Now, you might remember that in May 2018, there was a thing in the U.S., you may have heard about this because it made the news, it went viral. There were graduating students at a high school in Wisconsin, and they appeared to perform a Nazi salute in a photograph before their junior prom. Do you remember that? The image goes viral on social media, and the school decides not to punish the students due to their First Amendment rights. So the Institute for Historical Review, which was formed in 1978, is a Holocaust denial body associated with neo-Nazism. And American neo-Nazis are known to attack and harass minorities, as we've seen in recent times. In 2020, the FBI reclassified neo-Nazis to the same threat level as ISIS. The director of the FBI saying, quote, "Not only is the terror threat diverse, it's unrelenting." So there is some good news there. Okay, so that's the United States. Now we're going to move to the United Kingdom, where the rest of our story takes place. So across the pond, a British neo-Nazi activist named John Tyndall forms a party called the British National Party in 1982. It's a far-right fascist political party with currently no elected representatives at any level of the UK government, but it did at one time, and it certainly could again. The party is ethnic nationalist. It believes this is a party. This is a political party that had people representing them in government at one time and still exists and could have representation again. They believe only white people should be citizens of the UK. They want to stop non-white immigration, and non-white citizens, they said, should be stripped of their citizenship and removed from the country. I mean, they're not mincing words here. They're just laying it out for you. The group promotes biological racism and the white genocide conspiracy theory, calling for global racial separatism and condemning interracial relationships. Under Tyndall, which is, again, the founder of the party, the BNP emphasized anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. So, I mean, just flat out neo-Nazis. Like, they're not even pretending to be anything else. Under his successor, however, the party's focus switched from anti-Semitism towards Islamophobia, while its social policies oppose feminism and LGBT rights. So, it's in this climate and with these neo-Nazi ideals and principles and history of violence that young, impressionable minds are molded to hate and fear others. And it's under the influence of the neo-Nazi handbook that someone like David Copeland turns from regular citizen into a terrorist. David James Copeland is born May 15th, 1976 in the London borough of Hounslow. His father is an engineer, his mother is a housewife. They're a working-class family with 3 sons in total. It's alleged that as a teenager, Copeland was afraid he was gay, but more than that, he was definitely paranoid, because when his parents were singing the Flintstones theme songs on the TV, he thought that they were trying to tell him that they knew he was gay when they were singing the lyrics, "We'll have a gay old time." Cha! I mean, talk about being paranoid. At around 12, he starts having sadomasochistic dreams where he's reincarnated as an SS officer with access to women as slaves. Okay, first off, where the fuck does a 12-year-old learn about the SS and women slaves? Like, do they teach that in school at that age? Where did he even hear about that kind of stuff? Apparently, he's a fairly intelligent kid, according to his dad, and later psychiatrists would say that he had a higher than average IQ, and his mom would say that he was, quote, a happy lad. Okay, so to counter his gay feelings, as a teen, he starts listening to heavy metal bands, and fellow students give him the nickname Mr. Angry, which is not very clever. But now we have anger, we have paranoia, we have repressed homosexual, not heading in a good direction. Teachers at this time say they have no recollection of Copeland. He had basically become invisible to the world. At 19, his parents separate, and he leaves school and has a string of failed jobs and blames immigrants for stealing his job. Nothing like blaming someone else for you being a failure. So he turns to crime, drinking, and drug use, obviously. Somehow his dad gets him a job as an engineer's assistant on the London Underground, but also at this time, he starts to isolate from friends and family. In May 1997, Copeland joins the British National Party, which I just described who these people are and what they stand for. I mean, white, nationalist, homophobic, anti-immigration, anti-Semitic, yeah, them. He's only 21 years old when he's a steward at a BNP meeting where he meets the founder and then leader of the party, John Tyndall. During this time, he reads The Turner Diaries, which I had to Google, is a 1978 novel that depicts a violent revolution in the U.S. leading to the overthrow of the federal government and a race war leading to the extermination of all non-whites. The book influences white nationalism and inspires hate crimes and acts of terrorism around the world. Oh, but wait, it gets better. Because while he's reading that, he also downloads the so-called Terrorist's Handbook off the internet and learns how to make bombs with fireworks and alarm clocks. Oh, and get this. He actually leaves the BNP, citing that it wasn't hardline enough, because it wasn't taking military action against its opponents. Instead, he joins the much smaller and obscure National Socialist movement and becomes the regional leader for Hampshire. So, while he's reading the Turner Diaries, he's learning how to make bombs, and he's joining far-right extremist political parties. He goes to his doctor, who prescribes him antidepressants after he tells the doctor he thinks he's losing his mind. I mean, if somebody comes to you and says he thinks you're losing your mind, do you just prescribe them antidepressants? Maybe you should make them see like a specialist or like a therapist or maybe ongoing meetings. You don't just prescribe somebody drugs and then like, okay, bye, see you, thanks for coming. I got my cut from the drugs. That's all I care about. Basically, he's a ticking time bomb at this point. He's full of hate, anger, and fear. Reading hate propaganda, learning how to make weapons, and all of this with his internalized homophobia and unacceptance of who he really is. London, in April 1999, is under attack. On the 17th of April, a nail bomb had exploded on Electric Avenue in Brixton, South London, a predominantly black community. Market traders notice a suspicious bag and even move it several times before finally calling the police. But as the cops arrive, the bomb goes off at 5:25 p.m. 48 people are injured. The explosion sends nails soaring in all directions, blowing out windows and blasting parked cars. Then, exactly a week later, a second bomb on the 24th of April at Brick Lane in the East End of London explodes. A suspicious bag is picked up and put into the trunk of a car, thankfully, where it exploded. Even so, 13 people are injured and the surrounding buildings are damaged. At the time, Muslims were gathering outside the East London Mosque for prayers. The two bombings are quickly linked, and it's clear the motive is racist. And although the attacks are race-related, police warn that the next target could be a gay bar. And the Yard, which is a pub in Soho, displays a poster warning its customers to stay vigilant during these dangerous times. CCTV footage from the Brixton attack shows the suspected bomber, which Copeland sees on TV, and he moves his next bombing from the Saturday to the Friday. A colleague of his, Paul Mifsud, what a terrible last name, recognizes Copeland from the CCTV footage and alerts the police about 1 hour and 20 minutes before the third bomb goes off. The gay community in London had feared an attack in the wake of the Brixton and Brick Lane nail bombings, even so far as the edition of the Pink Paper, which is the newspaper for the gay community, warns of a possible attack and was urging gays and lesbians to stay vigilant. Mr. Peter Thatchell, spokesman for the gay rights group Outrage, said the gay community had believed the Old Compton Street area was a safe haven. Quote, they felt able to relax and hold hands without fear of attack. Which brings us now to the Admiral Duncan, one of Soho's oldest gay pubs. Soho in London has been an entertainment district since the 19th century, and the Admiral Duncan, sitting on Old Compton Street, has seen it all. Named after Admiral Adam Duncan, who defeated the Dutch in the Battle of Camperdown in 1797, the pub has been around since at least 1832 and has a colorful past. In the 1800s, a wooden-legged Irish ex-sailor, which I love the imagery. Like, you've seen, in Family Guy, there's that fisherman and all of his limbs are like wood, his arms and his legs. That's who this guy was. I mean, he probably only had one wooden leg, but that's what I'm picturing. A wooden-legged Irish ex-sailor. Anyway, he was living at the pub, and he's charged with high treason for throwing stones at King William IV. Can you imagine? This peg-legged ex-sailor was found guilty, and he's shipped off to Australia, because that's what England did in those days. They dumped all of their prisoners in Australia. Fast forward to the night of Friday, April 30th, 1999. Okay, we're at the Admiral Duncan pub. We're in the heart of London's gay community. It's the start of a bank holiday weekend. The pub and the street outside are especially busy. There's a sports bag left unattended in the pub. It goes unnoticed for a while, but eventually people start to wonder who it belongs to. Just as the pub manager, Mark Taylor, moves to investigate the abandoned bag, the bomb explodes at 6:37 p.m. As the bomb goes off, over 1,500 4-inch nails are flung into the air, piercing everything and anything it comes in contact with. 79 people are injured that night. 4 survivors have limbs amputated. Others lose their eyes. And 3 people are ultimately killed by the projectiles. Eyewitnesses say they hear a loud noise like a clap of thunder or a gas explosion, and then widespread panic as glass and debris are strewn across Old Compton Street in front of the Admiral Duncan pub. Nick Ames, a witness of the event, saw immediately after the blast. He said, quote, a huge plume of smoke coming out of the front of the Admiral Duncan pub. There was a person who was either inside the pub or a passerby who was blown across the street. A man was being helped out of the pub with what seemed to be severe leg injuries. In fact, his foot was more or less hanging off the end of his leg. Over 60 walking wounded were taken to St. Thomas Hospital, University College Hospital, and Royal London Hospital, where major incident alerts are declared and extra staff are brought in to help. There are those with serious burns ranging from 25% to 50%, amputees, and some victims lost their lower limbs or parts of limbs. Nick Moore, 31 years old, John Light, 32, and 27-year-old Andrea Dykes, who is 4 months pregnant with her first child, die in the explosion. Her husband Julian is seriously injured but survives. These 4 friends from Essex were at the pub to celebrate Andrea's pregnancy. All of this is a one-man campaign by neo-Nazi Copeland, who is trying to stir up ethnic and homophobic tensions in the country. 2 days after the attack on the Admiral Duncan, thousands of people packed into Soho Square as part of an open-air meeting. Among those who speak are the Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner, who places a van outside the pub. He's getting witness statements and gathering evidence. The van is manned entirely by gay and lesbian cops who turn the tide on an otherwise precarious relationship between the community and the police force. All the leaders of the country are united in their message. The British Home Secretary, Mr. Jack Straw, says the attacker, quote, has no humanity whatsoever. The police will spare no effort in tracking them down. We're dealing with people who have warped minds, right-wing extremists who are obviously racist and homophobic. Even the conservative leader, Mr. William Hague, condemned the attack as, quote, appalling and barbaric, while the Liberal Democrat leader, Mr. Paddy Ashdown, said it was an act of, quote, mindless brutality committed by, quote, cowards of the highest order. Then on May 2nd, 1999, only a few days after the attack, the Metropolitan Police Anti-Terrorist Branch charges 22-year-old David Copeland with murder. In interviews with police, Copeland says he worked alone. He never talked about his plans with anyone. He admits to being a neo-Nazi with a strong desire to spread fear and trigger a race war. Quote, my main intent was to spread fear, resentment, and hatred throughout the country. It was to cause a racial war. If you've read the Turner Diaries, you know that the year 2000 there'll be an uprising and all that racial violence on the streets. My aim was political. It was to cause a racial war in this country. There'd be a backlash from the ethnic minorities. Then all the white people will go out and vote BNP. End quote. Okay, well, you're totally wrong, because in 2000 there was no uprising. He thought there was going to be this huge turning point in 2000, so bye, Felicia. After that, he kind of loses his mind, because then he starts writing to a BBC correspondent, Graham McLagan, denying that he's schizophrenic and telling him that the ZOG, which is short for the Zionist Occupation Government, which I Googled, is sometimes also referred to as the Jewish Occupational Government. It's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory claiming Jews secretly control the governments of Western states. So, according to believers of this, a secret Zionist organization controls international banks and through them the governments in order to collude against white Christian or Islamic interests. So he's basically saying that this weird Jewish conspiracy theory government is pumping him full of drugs in order to get rid of it. Like, you need to lock him away. He's crazy. He's paranoid. He's schizophrenic. He also later writes, quote, I bombed the blacks, Pakis, degenerates. I would have bombed the Jews as well if I'd gotten a chance. I guess degenerates are gays. Apparently, Copeland first wanted to bomb the Notting Hill Carnival, which is a 2-day event happening in August since 1966. It attracts 2.5 million people and is one of the world's largest street festivals with a significant event in Black British culture. He got the idea to do this after watching images from the 1996 Atlanta Olympic bombings, where a blast went off in Centennial Olympic Park during the Olympic Games that killed one person and injured 111 others. When asked why he targeted minorities, Copeland simply said, quote, because I don't like them. I want them out of this country. I believe in the master race. These people are so stupid. Like, all terrorists and all of these, like, terrorists, I don't understand. Oh, okay, we'll talk about it later. Copeland is assessed at Broadmoor Hospital, where 5 psychiatrists diagnose him with paranoid schizophrenia and personality disorder. Big surprise. However, none of it severe enough for him to avoid a murder charge. So, Copeland is tried at the Old Bailey. Oh, the Old Bailey. If you're a friend of the podcast, you know the Old Bailey. It's like an old friend. So reliable at this point. Remember Stephen Port, Colin Ireland, Dennis Nilsson? All tried at the Old Bailey. Aww. Anyway, this asshole pleads guilty to manslaughter on diminished responsibility, but that is not accepted by the prosecution or the jury, and on the 30th of June 2000, he's convicted of 3 counts of murder and planting bombs and gets 6 life sentences, with the trial judge saying it would never be safe to release him. Then on March 2nd, 2007, the High Court decides he should stay in jail for another 50 years, and they rule out a release until 2049, when he would be 73. Copeland appeals the ruling, but it stands. He's such a loser because then in June 2014, he attacks another inmate with a shiv, which is, a razor stuck to a toothbrush handle. He pleads guilty and is sentenced to another 3 years. Like, this guy's just never getting out. But as I mentioned earlier, this episode is a story within a story, this intermingled web of Nazis and hate crimes. So from the true gay crime of the Nazis to the true gay crime of David Copeland planting a nail bomb at the Admiral pub based on Nazi ideology to this next chapter, we move now to David Morley. So David Morley was a manager at the Admiral pub on the night the nail bombs explode. On that fateful night, he is working at the pub when the bomb goes off. He's yelling, crying, he's confused. He suffers from burns from the attack and is treated at the hospital. The weeks that follow, he visits and comforts victims of the attacks who suffered much worse than he did. But time moves on and wounds heal, and as the years pass, he gets another job at Brompton's, which is another gay bar located in Earl's Court. He survived the hate crime of the nail bomb at the Admiral pub in 1999, but on the early morning hours of October 30th, 2004, David Morley is the victim of another hate crime. At 3:10 that morning, Morley and his friend Alistair Whiteside are sitting on a bench near London's Hungerford Bridge, which is right next to the London Eye, if you know that area, when a group of teens approached them. Now, these fucking asshole teenagers are a stupid 14-year-old damaged girl named Chelsea O'Mahony, some dick named Reese Sargent, who's 21, another fucking asshole named Darren Case, 18, and finally a prick named David Blenman, 17, all from Kensington, South London, and all fucking trash. I don't have a lot of sympathy for youth who commit these types of crimes because I know the law goes easy on them because, they're young, but I was fully aware of myself at that age, so I knew what I was doing, and I was in control of my facilities. So these fucking teenagers are taking part in a trend that's happening at the time called happy slapping. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's where you go around beating random people up and you film it. So, 14-year-old girl named O'Mahony goes up to the gay men on the bench and says, quote, "Pose for the camera, we're doing a documentary on happy slapping," and then the group attacks the men. They steal Whiteside's phone, and then they start beating on the men, just wailing on them. And finally, the girl, O'Mahony, finishes the deal by kicking Morley in the head 2 or 3 times like a football. They leave the men on the ground, and then they go out into the night. They eventually find 3 more people to beat up that night. Like they're pure evil. Morley is taken to St. Thomas Hospital, where they operate, but he's pronounced dead at 7:40 p.m. They find he suffered 44 injuries with 5 fractured ribs, his death caused by a ruptured spleen and fractured ribs. The pathologist says the injuries resembled a car accident. During interviews with police, the 14-year-old psycho bitch tells police they planned to beat up, quote, tramps, druggies, or just people on the street. In December 2005, the 4 are found guilty of Morley's manslaughter. The girl gets an 8-year custodial sentence. So, which means she probably didn't even go to prison. She probably was just being watched. And then that ends at 22. 22. The guy is dead. She's free at 22. The rest of them get 12 years each, which the oldest one was 21. So he would get out at like 33. He's got his whole life ahead of him. Yeah, the guy is dead. The victim died. The guy's out at 33. They were prosecuted for murder, but the jury returned a verdict of manslaughter. At the memorial, there's 1,000 people which attend a vigil in commemoration of Morley's life at St. Anne's Church in Soho on November 5th, 2004. Morley's friends said, quote, "This is the second time he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But for all of us here today, he will be in the right place at the right time, which is a very special place in all of our hearts." Back at the Admiral pub, there is a memorial chandelier with an inscription and a plaque to commemorate those killed and injured in the blast, which the last time I was in London, I did visit the Admiral pub, and I did see that plaque, and it was very moving. And so ends the hate-filled crimes of a mentally ill man who was brainwashed by fear-based propaganda, believed it, and became a terrorist, and a man who was the victim of 2 hate crimes, and unfortunately did not survive the second. So I want to hear from you if you enjoyed this type of storytelling where it's sort of interweaving different stories together. I don't know how many opportunities I'll have to do that. I was doing research about the Admiral pub, and then I realized that David Copeland was neo-Nazi, and then I thought, wait a minute, the Nazis did lots of hate crimes and were against the LGBTQ2 plus community. Obviously, we know from the concentration camps. So I thought, oh my God, I'm going to do research on that and give the backstory of the Nazis, which turned out to be a lot. I mean, I summarized it, but there's a lot of information there, and it tied into David Copeland. And then when I heard that the bar manager of the Admiral pub was there that night and survived, but then like 5 years later dies in a hate crime called happy slapping. I mean, just what? It was like I was going down this black hole where it was just, hate crimes and propaganda and oh my God, and all the conspiracy theories and the things they believe in. But you know what? Very reminiscent of what's going on in the US these days. I mean, just not living in reality, are we? It's kind of scary. Every day I hear these stories coming out of the US and it's freaking me out. Like, where is this heading? Nowhere good. Like, these are the Republicans. This is an official party. There's only 2, that really matter. And one of them has completely lost their minds. Believing in conspiracy theories, QAnon. When you're allowed to just spread lies and deny truth. I know the First Amendment is about freedom of speech, but we live in an era and an age where everything is on film. How can you lie? But they do. But how can you lie about stuff that's... you're telling people to not believe what they're seeing and hearing. And then they believe it. That's the scary part. So let's talk about minors. What is your take on minors committing crimes? What do you think is a suitable punishment for... Let's take this specific example. So let's keep it about this example. These 4 teenagers killed a man. Okay. Did they set out to kill him? This reminds me a lot of if you're a patron, you got this exclusive episode on Charlie Howard where these minors basically killed him. Did they set out to kill him? I don't think it was their intention, but they beat him up. They threw him over the bridge. They threw him into the raging river down below. And he died. So maybe your intention was not to kill him, but who cares about fucking intentions when you actually do kill somebody? You were negligent in your actions. You brought upon his death. You didn't just slap him in the face and say, "You bastard, I hate you." It's not like a 1950s movie where like a man slaps a woman. Remember men used to slap women in movies? Oh my God. God, can you imagine if they tried to pull that off today? Eek. Oh, it's so cringy. Different time. But yeah, they beat him up and threw him over a bridge. So if somebody died, so in the example of Charlie Howard, and in this example, they were happy slapping. So they were going around and beating people up and filming it and just for no reason. Okay. If you do that and somebody dies, you're a fucking murderer. I don't know. I don't like this whole manslaughter bullshit. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know all the details. If somebody has a counter argument to this, please, I would love to hear it. truegaycrime@gmail.com. I would love to hear people's opinions on this. Manslaughter, murder, all of this stuff. In this specific case, though, they were minors. One of them was 21. That's an adult, isn't it? But they all got 12 years. They were convicted for manslaughter, which I guess means we didn't premeditate to kill him, but it's still fucking murder. You killed him. And then you only get 12 years. But the guy was 21. Like, isn't that an adult? He should have got more time, right? And also, so what? You're 17. You don't know what you're doing when you're 17. You're not responsible for your actions. Yeah, you fucking are. You're 17 years old. You killed a person. Yeah, go to jail. Fuck off. Like, you fucked it up. You make this. Here's the thing. I'm about to make a really good point, and this is going to be a mic drop moment. Decisions have consequences. No matter how old you are. I have decided to do things which have had lifelong consequences for me. Okay? Life has consequences. Decisions have consequences. You made a decision. Somebody died. There's a consequence. 12 years is not enough. Okay, now I open the floor to hear the counter arguments. I would love to hear them. Because I'm that person, I'm very open, and I like discussion, and I like opinions. That's it for this week. I'll see you in the next episode of True Gay Crime. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to find the True Gay Crime Facebook page and follow us on Instagram at True Gay Crime. And we'd love to hear from you. Do you have an LGBTQ crime story from your city? You can send your story to truegaycrime@gmail.com, and I'll share it on a future episode of the show. Did you know you can subscribe, rate, and review True Gay Crime on Apple Podcasts? It would mean everything to me if you did, because it helps me create content you like, and it lets Apple know to share it with more people. Thank you for listening. And remember, always look behind you, lock your doors, tell someone where you're going, and look out for each other.
Why can't we all just get along?